Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and this is an Alfetta, the family car that drove like a sports car. It was revolutionary. I'm sure many of you believe that it was BMW or maybe even Jaguar with the Mark I that invented this class of car. But you'd be wrong. Today I'm going to be making the case as to why the Alfetta was the first effective sports saloon. Not only was it quick, but it actually drove like a sports car too. It should have propelled Alfa to the stars. In this video, I'm also going to tell you why sadly it didn't. The Alfetta was engineering art. It was a complete clean sheet design from the previous car. The only thing that was carried over was the already class-beating engine. What made it handle so well was the transaxle layout. So perfect 50-50 weight distribution in a saloon, don't forget, allied with rack and pinion steering and even inboard rear brakes. So they really went all out to make this the best possible handling car. It was so good that this same basic design carried on from 1972 when this was launched all the way to the early 90s. You can tell that Alfa's own engineers knew they had something special and groundbreaking with this car because if you look at the name Alfetta, it was named after the nickname for the Alfa Romeo Formula One cars of the 50s. So the mechanics in the pits in Formula One called those cars Alfettas, little Alfas. They were also transaxle, so when this was being designed and they knew it was so advanced, that's the name they decided to use. But enough of the history, let's take it out and I'm going to tell you about how it drives now. I haven't yet even mentioned this little jewel of an engine. So the Alfa twin cam originally came out, I think, in the 60s. It was already really advanced for its time, and the fact that it was carried over into this car really makes perfect sense because why wouldn't it be? It was such a good engine already. By the way, if you want to help me continue to do reviews on incredible cars like this, rare cars, interesting cars, please do subscribe because it really does make a difference to the channel. That engine, this one is the 1.8 version with 122 horsepower, which for a car this era, weighing, I think these weigh about 1,000 kilograms, is plenty enough for it to be fun. So it seems like the wipers either have full speed ahead or nothing, and then they stop right in the middle of the windscreen. This test is going to be fun! But even then, obviously, we haven't got off to a brilliant start because the wipers are a little bit getting in the way, but I'm just going down the road and the way this steers is just sublime. The steering is light, it's really light once you get going, and yet it's very communicative. It's just fantastic and it's precise. It's got to be the crowning glory of this car because you just don't expect it. This car steers better than many sports cars and better than many, I don't know, many cars of today, definitely. The wheel is really canted forward, which can be a bit distracting. Those wipers. But apart from that, it is absolutely awesome. Gearbox, Alfa. It's quite light actually, but a bit bulky, a bit difficult. Transaxle layout, you can't really get away from that. But let's experience the lovely twin cam. So it feels like it has the right kind of, right amount of power for a car of this age. Definitely feels, it doesn't feel quick by modern standards, but it wouldn't embarrass you in traffic or anything like that. But it just feels so live, the whole thing, and agile. It's just lovely. The ride is fairly good. Driving position, well, it's Alfa, so obviously short legs, long arms, you just have to accept that. what a beauty. Turning is so positive and just brimming with feel that it's just, it's a delight. That you have to understand, not only does this feel really nice to drive now, but it would have felt absolutely mind-blowing in 1972 if you think about the other sort of family cars that were around in those days and how they handled absolutely like boats. The steering was, you know, must have been a revelation. The nearest competitor and a car that is part of this story in the way is the BMW E12 series. Now it had a wider range of engines, so some of them were quicker than this because they had the 2.8, they then had the 535, although that was later on. So they were faster, they were better built, but they were nowhere near as involving as the Alfetta. They were not engineering jewels in the same way. In typical German fashion, they were simply better made, so they were better all-round cars. But oh my god, they do not drive like this. And even the later cars, which are incredible, the M cars and stuff, they're in a different league to this really. But as a standard family car, the way that this drives, the feedback it gives you, the delicacy is just astonishing. It does not feel like a family car even now. It's just wonderful. Okay, let's get this wipers on. So it is a bit greasy now, and wiper. We'll see how it is in the S's. I would assume it feels like it's probably going to understeer initially, but we'll try and going on a sort of slightly neutral, well, more than a neutral throttle to just, yeah, bit of lean from the front end. Yeah, I mean there isn't a huge amount of power, so you can't play with the back end so much, but yeah, so going fast and hard and it will understeer, but if you're going a bit slower and then accelerate your way out, it's really wonderfully balanced. And it's, oh, that's steering. You get into the corner and it's begging you to turn in more. It's saying, look, I can turn in tighter than this if you want, just keep turning. It's just so keen. Right, let's do another little pull. That little 1.8. And must thank Alex Dupe Motorsport. They've brought the car up for me to test today, and these are so rare now for reasons that I will discuss in a moment. And they've done some work to this car. This is a South African import. Let's just rev it through. Yeah, so the red line is sort of 5.8, but it feels like it wants to rev a little bit past 6, if that tachometer is accurate, which I think it is. It just feels like a nice Alfa twin cam, just a lovely thing. Quite linear, lovely. Anyway, Alex Dupe, thank you so much for bringing this down. They've done some work to the mechanical elements of this car. It was originally a South African import, so it's pretty solid, I think. An ever so delightfully progressive little bit of slide from the back on that corner. It wouldn't slide normally, but it's wet, and that corner is off camber, bumpy. You're coming up, it always gets the back ends out, but that was lovely and progressive. I didn't really even have to steer into it because it was just telling me it's fine, I'm just moving out slightly and that's it. So really nice. So the Alfetta drove amazingly, but on top of that, it was actually a brilliant family car. There's loads of room in here. It's comfortable, suspension settings are pretty good, and you got a massive boot. So it wasn't, I mean, it was an all-round absolutely brilliant car, and it should have been the start of Alfa's growth into the behemoth that BMW eventually came to be. But that wasn't to be, and why is that? Well, It does have some faults, this car. Some you'll be expecting, some not. Let's start with the ones you won't be expecting maybe as much. Those inboard rear brakes, they may help. Obviously you bring the weight in so it's not unsprung, but they were difficult to service because of where they were by the gearbox. I think that if there were leaks around, then it was more likely that they would get contaminated with oil, that kind of stuff. So they were a bit of an expense, and I think in the later designs they moved them back, well, not the Alfetta, the other cars that use this chassis, they moved them back outboard. So a bit of a compromise. Also, the gearbox is rubbish. I've driven lots of different examples of these cars. They all feel slightly different, but in all of them it's very long, quite unwieldy, and if it's very well set up, it kind of at least gives you a bit of that Alfa feel in that it's so different from anything else, but it doesn't help the driving. So that's a little bit of a shame. But then worst of all, of course, is quality and the reputation. So being in here now, this is a 1978 car and built in South Africa. It does feel quite flimsy, I have to be totally honest. It's still quite a nice, you know, it's a nice place to be, but everything looks, they don't feel bad, the heater controls, but everything looks like it's quite cheap. I know that an E12 that you would get into is going to feel a bit more solid. Probably not as solid as you think if you're used to modern cars, but also I think that the way they were built meant that they did rust a bit less. These were nowhere near as bad as the Alfa Suds that really killed off the Alfa name in terms of rust. But all the same, they did rust. And because they weren't held in as high regard as the other cars, people just didn't look after them. And unfortunately, that's what makes them so incredibly rare today. So how to sum up the Alfetta? It was an absolutely wasted opportunity. It was a car which, had it been properly built, would have absolutely, well, it was class leading, but it would have been class leading in every way, and it could have really moved things on for Alfa. The other problem was that they had so little money after this, they kind of seemed to have thrown everything into this, that then the other models they made off this platform, like the Giulietta and so on, they were compromised because they had to use the same platform for lower end cars, which caused all sorts of other issues. And of course, yeah, the lack of doing things properly, which is a well-known Italian problem, meant that the quality just wasn't there. But you have to try and think just what could have been, because this is a little jewel of the car. The execution just let it down a bit, and that's really sad, but it's been amazing to drive it today. Thanks again to Alex Duke Motorsport. Do have a look at their website, put it up here. If you want me to do a review on one of your cars, please get in touch. This is the best way. And of course, if you like this video, please do subscribe. It really does help the channel.